And welcome to the Faithful Informed Parenting Podcast. This is the podcast where we'll have honest conversations around parenting and personal growth. My name is Dr. Marian Perez, and I am your host for today and always. Today, I have with me a very special guest. She's actually my neighbor and a really good friend of mine. Her name is Colleen, and her parenting style is very similar to mine. And so I asked her to be on this podcast. So, Colleen, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Like, tell us about your educational background and your work and a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so education-wise, I had planned on going into undergraduate to become a doctor. And so I actually got a major in biology and minor in biomedical sciences. And then I decided I wanted to switch that over to psychology. So I did a double major, biology and psychology. And then I took the psychology route and pursued a master's in clinical psychology. And then I actually became published in a Journal of Personality and Individual Development on an article that I had done for my thesis. And then after that, and during that, I've been working at a company called Let's Play Sports for the last 23 years. And that's where I've learned a lot of leadership development. That's actually my role right now as Director of Leadership and Development, and actually where I came across the topic that we're talking about today. I've been married 16 years and counting, and we have two amazing children. Logan is my son, he's 10 years old, and then Brooklyn is my spicy daughter, and she is 7.
Yes, she is spicy.
She is. Yeah.
Actually, my middle daughter and her younger daughter, they were best friends. And so they're
Yes.
these kids.
Besties.
Okay, go ahead.
I said besties.
They are besties, absolutely. They were funny. Okay, so in today's podcast, our topic is going to be assuming best intent. And this came up when Colleen and I recently took a walk together. And she shared some things that her mom used to do that was a really good example to her. And so, Colleen, tell us a little bit about assuming best intent. Can you tell me what does that mean exactly?
Yeah, great question. So I came across this phrase in my company actually, because we have some meeting norms and we have a 10 commandments of meeting norms. And the end commandment is thou shalt always assume good intent. And what that means for us is instead of asking, what is that person doing, asking, what have I missed? And so you're asking questions for clarity versus making assumptions. And as you and I were walking and talking about it, it made me think about my mom and how she parented me when I was younger. And I just remember her always saying to me, hey, you don't want to assume that when your child does something that it's malicious or that they have negative intent. And she gave me a story of when I was a kid and she used to polish her wooden dining room chairs with Pledge. And I was very young and did not know what Pledge was. And so I grabbed a container of Vaseline and thought that that was polish. And I rubbed the Vaseline on all of the chairs. And when my mom had a bunch of guests over, they started to slide off the chairs and she realized what I had done. And at that point, it took everything in her to relax and find out what my intent was. What was I doing and why did I do that? And so she very calmly just said, hey, Colleen, why did you put Vaseline all over my expensive dining room furniture? And my response was, because I wanted to make it look nice and polish it like mommy does. And so it was in that moment, I think she realized, wow, here I could have made a bunch of assumptions, punished my child, sent her to her room, grounded her. But by taking that reflection break and asking a couple of clarity questions, she was able to realize that my intent was really just to make her furniture look as nice as she does it. She was my role model, and I wanted to do the same things that she was doing. And so assuming best intent, positive intent means exactly that, is clarifying what somebody's actions are before making assumptions about why you think they're doing something.
Well, I find that really interesting because I feel like as we cultivate that and model that for our own kids and work with our kids, it kind of spills over into all of our relationships, right? Because then we want to say, okay, into, I know my relationship with Aaron or my relationship with my friends, I always have to ask, well, what are they really trying to get at? Like, what are they really trying to say? And where is this coming from? And helping to understand. Although I do have to say, Aaron is really good about asking questions, but sometimes it drives me nuts. He's like trying to figure out, I'm like, you're asking me a million questions, but I know he's just trying to do it to be kind.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
so this brings me to another question. So, how does assuming best intent change the way we interpret our child's behavior?
Yeah, so I think that when you assume the best intent, you don't immediately form an opinion that's negative with your child's behavior. So once again, oh, why is my kid kicking the door? Or why are they leaving their stuff in the middle of the doorway? Or so rather than thinking that you're some kind of a victim of your child's behavior, I think that when you assume best intent, you can recognize that these are kids and they may have great intent and just poor execution on a lot of things. And it takes a parent who can be patient and help them with that execution and guide them to better execution in the future.
Yeah, that reminds me of my little one that you know very well.
Mr. Henry, hate the tank.
Yes, and he's really strong-willed. And when he was younger, I want to say like 4, even 5, he used to get so mad when my girls would lock him out. He used to bang on the door and kick it and start hitting. And at first I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And then I calmed myself and asked him, hey, we can't kick, we can't do that. What's going on with you? Why are you kicking the door? And he's like, well, they're not letting me in and they don't want to play with me. And yeah, it was definitely talking him through it. And then he would get so frustrated that he didn't know how to use his words. And so he would just hit the door and kick. And so we had to talk about, okay, you've got to use your words. And when you become really upset, do some. And so I would lay on the floor with him and I would pretend we're whales and I would be like, okay, do some deep breathing like whales do, like, woo.
Yeah.
Anyways, and we'd roll
That's
on the
awesome.
floor and so it was a good way for us to connect our brain. But yeah, it was really hard for me at first to kind of understand where he was coming from. I was like, where is this hitting coming from and this kicking? But it was just the frustration because he wanted to be with them and they wanted to have some girl time. So that was rough.
And I think too, when children, I think assuming positive intent with your kids also builds trust because, again, children watch everything that we as parents do and how we respond. And so when you respond to their behaviors, automatically assuming the worst intent, then what that tells them is you don't believe they're inherently good. You believe that the things they're doing are inherently bad. So then they start to get afraid to tell you or open up to you about things because they know, uh-oh, if she's reacting that way about this, leaving my shoes in the doorway, how is she going to react when she finds out I broke her vase or I spilled something? And so I think if you assume positive intent and try to ask clarifying questions to get to the heart of a child's behavior, it also it does kind of inherently build some trust there, and it lets your child know you believe that what they're doing is good, and there may be that poor execution or a misunderstanding or some misguidance, but ultimately what they do is good.
And it fosters safety. It fosters a really safe relationship, and safe relationship is really what positively develops the brain and creates secure attachment and leads to resilience. So I have another one of these stories. um, about 2 summers ago, Henry shoved gum into the door. He put gum into the into the keyhole and then shoved it in with this key. And
Fun.
when when I was trying to, so he's a little impulsive, and so when I was trying to unlock the door, I couldn't get my key in, and so I was like, well, there's only one kid who would do this, and I know which one it is. So I
Yes.
asked him, rather than getting upset, I said, hey, Heather, can you tell me what's going on with the door? And then he was like, "Oh, I put gum in it." And I said, "Well, why'd you put gum in it?" And he was like, "Well, because I wanted to see how far I could get it back there. I just wanted to see how big the hole was. And so I wanted to see how far." And I was like, "Man, buddy, I totally get why you want to do that, but you know what? I can't keep on replacing the door, so you're going to have to pay to replace the doorknob."
Yeah,
He was
perfect.
like, "I do?" I was like,
Yeah.
"Yeah." I was like, "Because, we can't just, stick gum in there and then I can't use it anymore." And he was like, "Well, I didn't know it would get hard." And I was and like clump the door. And I was like, "Yeah, I know, but it did." But it was interesting because he just wanted to see how big the hole was, like how far he could go
Mhm.
back with it. And so he wanted to see what it would be like to shove gum in there.
Yeah, well, kids are still exploring their environment at this age. And again, they don't know how everything works. And so a lot of it is curiosity. What happens if I do this? What happens if I mix shaving cream, lotion, and paint, which my daughter is very well known for? She likes to make slime. And I hate slime in the house, but she loves to go, what happens if I add this to the slime? What happens if I do this to the slime? What happens when I add more of something? So it's like life. And unfortunately, our house sometimes becomes our kids' science experiments, but ultimately, they do have good intent. They're not trying to break the doorknob, he's not trying to damage your property. He's trying to explore and is curious and tickle that curiosity of what happens when I do this.
Yeah,
So,
it's interesting. So my older daughter, she is very strong-willed too, and she likes to have full control and autonomy of things, right? And
mhm.
we know that adolescents like to have full control, and so do parents, and so there has to be some kind of a middle ground. But I actually read in a book not too long ago that girls, when they become adolescents, actually have an innate mechanism, and something happens in their brain where they want to break free from you to become independent. It's like a natural progression of being independent. But in girls, it's a little bit stronger. And so they have this innate feeling of, I want to be in control because I need to be. I need to be in charge of myself. I can make decisions. I can do this on my own. And so then it's like understanding that in those moments reminds me of this is so important because when you're asking and you're learning, then you really understand the why behind the what. And that's so important, right?
Absolutely. It brings me back to a time where we had the 4th of July block party, and Lily went in and got dish soap to put in the bounce house when they had the water in there. And Aaron was like, who brought out the soap? And why are there suds everywhere? But I think the girls were thinking, well, we can have a foam party and we'll clean the bounce house at the same time. And when it rains again, we'll just rinse all the soap away and everything will be great. And so again, I love that because it was like you just see all these suds inside the bounce house, and their little minds are just thinking all these things like, yeah, we'll clean it up and we'll have some fun and it'll be great and it won't be, harmful to anybody. And of course, they just don't realize sometimes as parents, we're the ones cleaning up all the messes that get made. And so, but they really do have good intent if you just ask some questions like, why would you do this?
Oh my gosh, it does get rough, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have another question for you.
Yeah.
When is it hardest to assume best intent, and how can parents slow down long enough to choose curiosity over judgment?
So I love that question. I think it's hardest to assume best intent when you become a victim of somebody's behaviors, let it be your child or a road rage driver or something else. Then I think it's really hard to assume good intent because you feel like you were just personally attacked. And so I think that if you can take a pause and ask yourself, would a well developed, rational, kind hearted person just do this for no reason? And if you can ask yourself that question, then you start to go, yeah, why would somebody who doesn't know me want to just slide their car right in front of me and jam on the brakes. This person doesn't know me. We have no personal attachment or anything like that. We have no beef. So, same with our kids. Why would they want to personally attack you? And so, I think if you ask that question, you start to realize, okay, let me get to the heart and let me get deeper into what it is that my child is doing and why. And so, I think that if you can just, again, asking yourself that first question, why would any rational human being do this? Then it gets that curiosity juice flowing so that it hopefully pauses you just enough to avoid that judgment story that wants to come in. We want to write our own narratives when we feel like we're the victim. We tell ourselves the victim stories. And that's why I think a lot of times it's hard for us to assume best intent. That's usually when we don't. It's when we feel like we're a victim. And so then somebody else is attacking us, and this is the story we write.
Yeah, one of the things that is when it's hard for me to assume best intent is when I get triggered.
Yeah, that's a great thing too. We have a lot of baggage from our past and from our experiences that tell us certain things, and those do send triggers in your brain because that's self-preservation. So you get triggered to protect yourself. So you start getting ready and you get your forces up and your defenses ready because you're protecting yourself. And that happens a lot. I can't say that I have not been triggered on a daily basis with my kids.
Or when I'm overwhelmed. What do you think about when
Yeah.
you're overwhelmed, when your window of tolerance is just
Oh my
slightly smaller
gosh.
than normal?
Yeah, you mean every weekday, every day of the year? Yeah, I mean, it's true. When you're stressed, overwhelmed, hungry, tired, any of those things kind of lower your resilience to, the temptation to judge. And so I think that we're more apt to judge when we're not in a really healthy or positive mindset ourselves.
Yeah, so one thing, and I want to say that Logan has this thing too, but my kids always want a snack at the end of the day. And I'm tired and I don't want to go down there and I didn't
Kitchen's closed. Kitchen's closed. We
I
have
know.
hours. We have operation hours.
Operation
Yeah.
hours, that's hilarious. And then, my son's like, "Oh, can you go downstairs and get me a snack?" Why can't you go down there and get a snack? Well, I'm scared downstairs. It's like,
Yes. The fear of the house. I always tell the kids, and I know this is not very great, and I try not to do this all the time, but I tell the kids, I'm like, if you are terrified about somebody being in our house right now, we should not be in our house. We should be running. Like, if you're scared of the house, let's get out of here. Let's escape, run away, because obviously there's impending doom and danger in our house. And they're like, there's not. I'm like, well, then why, again, why are you afraid to go down the stairs if there's none? If there is, why am I still in the house? Like, let's go get out of here. So,
in the
yes,
beginning, I was always like, dang it, I am not a maid. Do I have maid written on my forehead? You can go down there and get a snack. You know where the
I know.
refrigerator is. But I think once I understood and asked, well, why can't you go down there and get a snack? Well, I'm scared down there. Okay, all right. Well, let's go down there together. And it's
Hmm.
hard because I'm tired. I don't want to go downstairs at 8 o'clock at night or at 8:30. I
Yeah.
want to lay in my bed or be laying in, chatting with my kids on the sofa or whatever it is that we're doing. But I definitely don't want to go downstairs. But then I go downstairs because I know that it's not my child being um what's the word I'm looking for? Combative. It's
Right.
just, that he's scared to go down there on his own.
Yeah. And I think, too, this is hard for me. And this is an assumption that I make often, and it's a wrong one, is I assume that my kids are my age and thinking the way that I'm thinking. And I forget what it was like to be their age. I remember crawling into my mom's room late at night and sleeping on her floor because I was afraid. I remember not wanting to leave my room because I was terrified of what was on the other side of the door. I remember hearing noises and, conjuring up stories in my head about what those noises were, who's outside, what's that, all these things. And I think that that's, when we have fear in our world as kids, it just kind of manifests in different ways. And being afraid to walk down the stairs happens to be one of them for many kids.
For sure. And I feel like when we question things and we ask and we're curious about why kids do things, I feel like it's easier to have grace and empathy because then we learn the what behind or the why behind the what. And so um it gives us a lot of insight to what's happening at that moment.
Absolutely. Well, I think bringing it to, thinking of Jesus and in Jesus' day, where he could have made a lot of assumptions about a lot of people, but he ended up giving his love and grace to those that really needed it, and maybe the people that others looked upon and judged and didn't think deserved it. And so there was a lot of judgment on him and opportunities for him to judge. But again, if we model ourselves in that light, then we know, hey, before I start judging this person, this behavior, this act, this situation, let me ask some questions and seek to understand.
I love that, Colleen. I love that so much because modeling, as you mentioned, is the biggest thing we can do to impact our children. Our children, they what we say to them has no meaning if there's no action behind it. What we
Right.
do has 1,000 times a larger impact. And research says that over and over again that modeling what you want to see has the biggest impact on a kid. And so, if those are the qualities we want to instill in our children, then we do have to model what it looks like to be Christ-like and what it looks like to have grace and to have empathy or to have boundaries and, you know, limits. Like those are important too. And so I'm 100% with you. That was so good. So then I have one more question for
Yeah.
you. What is one everyday moment where parents can practice assuming best intent, like bedtime resistance and homework battles or
Yeah.
sibling conflict?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of moments in every parent's day that they can. So pick one. If you're a morning person, getting up and getting ready for the day. If you're a night owl, getting into bed, right after school. I know that for my kids, a lot of times I am just going crazy because I'm like, why aren't you doing your homework? You have homework to do, homework, homework, homework. And instead of assuming they just don't want to do it or they're lazy or they hate school, I've started to ask questions and, hey, what do you have on your plate today to do? What are your responsibilities? Oh, I have some homework to do. Okay, when do you think would be a good time to get that done? Well, maybe I want to do it after dinner. Okay, well, just so you know, we're having dinner at this time. Is this going to be enough time? Do you know how much time you need to do your homework? I have about an hour. Okay, so let's plan that out together when it looks good for you. Because I can tell you, my kids, they need to decompress after school. They do not like to come home from a long day of information overload and then get right into their homework. They like to zone out, tune out, veg out, whatever, and then they want to go back to their homework. But coming home right after school and diving into work is just not their best time and not a moment for them where they're going to be their most productive. So asking those questions, getting to understand your child's needs and trying to meet them halfway, I think is always important.
Yeah, that's for sure. And mine are also different. I have one that needs to decompress. I have another one that feels that if she can't do homework right after school, she's wasting time because she wants the rest of the evening to play. But so she'll even start her homework in the car before we even get home. And then I have
Mhm.
another one who likes to watch TV. And there I had to say, why are you watching TV when you should be doing homework? Oh, well, actually, when I listen to the TV, it helps me concentrate more on my homework. And at first I was like, is she using this as a cop out? Like she just want to watch TV. But
It's
she's
real.
yes, she was actually like getting because I don't function that way at all. So I had to remind myself, hey, just because you don't function this way doesn't
Yeah.
mean that other people don't. And she actually gets work done when she's watching TV and doing her homework. I don't know how that works, but
I am totally the same, Marion. I
wow.
will put something on in the background. I'll have music going. I'll have different audio sources all over. And then my brain somehow, because of the, background noise or white noise, whatever it is, kind of tunes everything else out. And then I start to concentrate. Or if you have a tactile kid, which I know Mr. Henry is very tactile. I used to have to study while running on a treadmill in college just so that I would absorb the information because I needed to move. I'm a handsy person. I talk with my hands, I move around a lot. And so that always helps me. But speaking of assuming positive intent, I feel like also if you know that somebody could interpret something that you do or your kids do in a negative light, it's always smart too to just pre-wire that. So I would tell people, hey, I just want you all to know I'm very tactile and I need to doodle while we're in the meeting to really keep my hands busy so that I can focus. I'm not ignoring you. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. Anything. In fact, it helps me listen and concentrate even more. And so it's something I had to let everybody know so they didn't write stories about me going, geez, Colleen was so rude, drawing on her paper while we were talking the whole time. So something helpful for your kids as well if they know that, uh-oh, somebody's going to think clicking the pen or doing something is annoying and that, these kids are just doing that on purpose. It's, no, I really do have a reason why. Let me explain that to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. They're all so different, and it's so important to really get behind what they're how they work and to understand them because when we assume positive intent, one thing we want to do is to understand our children. And
Yep.
so yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I would have to say that assuming best intent creates secure attachment. It creates resilience because it produces healthy brain connections. And that is basically that equals to good mental health and safe relationships with us, which equal to the same thing. And it also really creates a self awareness inside of them.
Yes, absolutely. It 100% does. And they start to recognize, oh, why am I automatically judging this situation or this person? Or why do I always assume that this behavior equals this? Or, yeah, absolutely.
Because it helps them to think through the situation in the moment.
Yep.
Where they may say, "Well, why am I doing that? I don't know why I'm doing that. Oh, it's because of this, or because this is going on in my brain." So it helps them to think through situations. And then, like with if a kid is struggling with per se hitting because they're little and their logical brain doesn't allow them to think through it, then, then you can, it's easier to say, hey, how could you handle this next time? How could you handle that better next time to prevent yourself from doing X, Y, or Z? Do you have any other examples you want to share? Like, is there anything that's pressing on your
Yeah.
mind?
So, yeah, funny because again, I recognized that Logan was very physical at a young age, and I could see that when he was frustrated, he wanted to kind of get that physical, release out. And I knew that if he kept it in, that wasn't going to be good for him. Or if he got it out on the wrong thing, his little sister, or some of our stuff that's, breakables or fragile, that wasn't going to be good either. And so we ended up purchasing a punching bag. And one of the things that we'll do if he gets frustrated is try to redirect that. And I know he needs to get that release out. So it's like, hey, why don't you go downstairs, punch the punching bag for a little bit, a few minutes, and really try and get out whatever it is that's frustrating you. And then when you feel like you're calm enough to talk, let's talk. And that's really worked well rather than me just assuming that he's trying to break things or that he's violent or anything like that. A lot of boys, especially, are physical and need that kind of physical release. Girls usually tend to be a little bit more on the emotional, not a bad emotional side, but they tend to need that release through crying or venting, things like that. So just very different, like you said, meeting your kids' needs where they're at and knowing that they're very different and you have to keep treating each person, each kid differently.
Yeah, that's really, really good. And then the other two things it really creates is empathy and trust, I think.
Yes, absolutely.
I shouldn't say I think, I know so.
Yeah. I was going to say it absolutely does. 100%. Kids need a safe space to be able to, again, make mistakes in this world and know that they're not going to be cast out of the family or alienated because they made a mistake. And so they need to know that you're there to coach them, guide them, mentor them, support them, show them the correct way to do things in the future. And these can all be learning lessons rather than, acts of punishment and bad behavior. So
Absolutely. All right. Okay. Well, that was it for our podcast today. Thank you, Miss Colleen, for joining me.
thanks for having me.
You're welcome. All right, you guys, have a wonderful day until next week.